What if I told you that landing a deal with Mark Cuban on Shark Tank wasn't the peak of the success, but just the beginning of a roller coaster ride? Today's guest took that leap, built a brand, and faced the brutal realities of entrepreneurship, losing six figures in inventory, shutting down her dream company, and then reinventing herself in the world of luxury real estate. Now she's helping founders navigate the startup grind with hard earned wisdom and no sugarcoating at all. She's the host of the Seed Money podcast, an angel investor and a serial entrepreneur who's been through the high and the heartbreaks of building a business. Welcome to another episode of our Founders Podcast. I'm your host, Ash, and this is a show where I interview proven founders and industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights to help you build, launch, and grow your business. In this episode, I talk to Jayla, the founder of Buy Coastal. Jayla, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ash. Thanks for having me. This is fun to be here.
Great. Do you have a favorite quote, something that inspires you would like to share with our audience?
Well, I can tell you the words that I have lived by for quite a while and continue to are basically patience and persistence. I feel like everything that I have been driven to do and accomplished in one way, shape, or form has been done by having patience, but also being relentlessly persistent in going after what I want.
No, definitely. And I love the hat, by the way.
Thanks. I have a lot. I
That's
own
a
a
good
lot of
one.
hats. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So before we move forward, would you be able to tell us more about what is, tell us about Bicoastal? Does the product do or the service do? Who is it for? And what's the main problem you're trying to solve here?
Yeah. So the company is Atlas Vacations, and it's a bi-coastal business right now. So I've got, half of my business is about 3,000 miles away in Stowe, Vermont, and the other half is here in Santa Barbara, California. And it started out, I started investing in short-term rentals, and that kind of evolved into a management company for luxury properties. And so it's really a boutique firm. We try to go above and beyond for our guests, our owners, and even our staff, all of our contractors and employees. And it's I have struggled with do I grow this and scale this, or do I keep it small and high end and offer a really, really high quality product? And the thing I've learned some hard lessons about trying to go too big, too fast in other industries. And so for that reason, we've stayed more of a boutique, kept it more of a boutique portfolio and really focusing on offering that premium high end service and experience for guests and owners.
Cool. Cool. This is really good. So talk to us about where actually the story began. Where did the idea came from, and what was you doing before this venture?
So, quick snapshot, I guess, of my career. I did 7 years in corporate working for lifestyle brands, Diesel Footwear and Burton Snowboards.
Mhm.
And then I had a crazy idea, thought it'd be so easy, and quit my job to launch a wine company that turned out to be very, very challenging. I had no idea what I was getting into. And I learned a lot of hard lessons and got very, very burnt out. So
Mhm.
burnt out. And I'd put my whole life on hold for 10 years. I did get married, but I missed friends' weddings and baby showers, and we had put off having kids. And when I transitioned out of that company, I said to myself, I never want to start another business. I just was
Mm.
so over it. And I went back to a corporate job. I took a year off. I had my son. I was like, I don't know what the heck I'm good at, what I want to do. And I decided to take a corporate job as VP of sales and marketing for a music company here in Santa Barbara. And it was funny because at the time I said, I never want to start another business. I just want to, collect a paycheck and chill and enjoy my weekends.
Mm,
But if I do ever start another business, it would be a service-based business. So my first company was consumer products, very challenging inventory, distribution, all that. And I thought a service-based business, while everything has its challenges, that would be easier.
mhm,
And so sure enough, a few years into the corporate job again, I realized I overcorrected and I really didn't want to work for someone else.
yeah,
And
yeah,
but I wanted a business that fit my lifestyle, not a business that just completely took over my lifestyle like the first one did.
mhm,
And I had invested in real estate. I bought a triplex in my early 20s. So I always knew the value of real estate and investing. It was a smart thing to do, and I was interested in it.
mhm,
Um, and we decided to buy a short-term rental. We stayed somewhere and we were like, wow, this place is killing it, with what we paid here, and it had a pool and it was great. So we decided to buy a place in wine country here in Santa Barbara. I ran all the numbers and I was like, this is a great investment.
mhm.
And then we hired a management company to run it, and they were so horrible. And I mean, I can't even tell you. It was like the worst experience ever, just like bad on so many levels, customer service, everything. And
Mm,
my husband kept saying, "You should do it. You should do it." And I was like, "I don't have time to do it." And then I was like, "Okay, I'll just do it." And so I did the like wake up at 4 a.m., for a few months. And I didn't even mean to, but I set it up to be able to manage like 100 properties because I,
wow.
I wanted it fully automated so that I could do it with minimal time. So anyway, that's what kind of sparked it. And then I realized, oh, this is actually fun. I like doing this. I like the hospitality side of it. I love real estate. I love the renovations, the design piece, the customer experience. I was like,
Mhm,
actually, and this is a service-based business. And this is something I don't need to get investors for. So I can grow it as at my own pace. And I can really fit this around my lifestyle
mm,
versus what I did with the previous venture. So that's kind of what inspired it. And it was, it hasn't been perfect. It's been a little bit of a learning curve to get it to where I have the team set up in place so it doesn't take over, because hospitality can be a 24-hour business. But I
mm.
have it in a really good place, this past year, especially where it doesn't, I've got a great team and it doesn't take up all my time. So I can do fun things like the podcast.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I want to talk about the team and the current business, how it's going. But you know what? We can't go to towards that question before before talking about Mark Cuban and the Shark Tank
Mhm.
thing, right? So
Yeah.
let's talk about it. How did that happen? What was the experience about, and what was the triggers when you got in, and then how did you felt about after cracking the deal? How was the experience?
Yeah, so when I left my job to start this company, I was very naive. I had no idea what it was gonna take. Like, looking back, I just can't believe I did that. But it also, when you quit your job and all your friends and family are like, "What is she doing? She had a dream job and she's quitting her job. Like, you are crazy." It you just are powered by determination, right? Because at least I was so determined to make it happen. So I pretty quickly ran through my savings, 401k, cashed all that in, credit cards, and I was like, okay, I need to raise outside money. So this was 2009. So we're in a recession. Um, I had no experience in this industry. I had no track record as an entrepreneur, and I had no sales. We were pre-revenue because it was alcohol. I needed money to get all the licensing and all that. Now it's much easier now to launch an alcohol brand, but then it was definitely more red tape, licensing, all that.
Mhm,
So I spent 18 months pitching investors. I ended up raising my first 500,000 from non-friends and family. I did do a small friends and family round before that,
mhm,
to get samples and do shelf stabilization, all that stuff. But I ended up raising the first 500,000 and we were ready to launch website. We were going direct to consumer. We were going to go into retail. And the only um, production facility that would take me on at that point was this group in Michigan randomly. And there were all these like licensing issues. It was low alcohol. So a regular winery didn't have the license to do it, but it was wine. So your typical low alcohol facilities didn't have the license. So there were all these weird things that I couldn't just have it made anywhere.
Mm.
And little did I know this production facility was like going out of business. So 6 months after we did our production run with them, they were out of business. And basically, we did our first production run and all the bottles showed up leaking. And
Oh
I mean,
no.
well, actually, it was two things. The first run had tomato from a Bloody Mary mix floating in it. Oh my God, you couldn't believe. And I was there on site. It was, and I'd worked in China. I was very familiar with production facilities. Like I wasn't new to that part.
Mm.
Um, but anyway, we lost $100,000 worth of inventory. And we'd spent a ton of money on legal at this point to get all of our licensing. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go out and raise more money. And this is not coming from a good place because we still have here we are over $500,000 in and still have no sales, right? And don't have a product to sell.
Mm.
And one of my advisors was like, you should go on Shark Tank. I was like, I don't want to go on that show. Like, no way. And I was going to meet him for lunch again. I was like, I have to just apply so that I can tell him I did it, because he keeps bugging me. So I applied for the show. I ended up getting the call to go on. I, jumped through all the hoops and got on there. And it was funny. I was in LA all ready to pitch. And I got up and I practiced for months. It's a long period from when they, call you to when you actually get to pitch. At least for
Oh,
me, it
okay.
was.
Okay.
And so I studied all the episodes. I mean, I was so ready and dialed to go out there. And I was in the dressing room and they came in and they're like, we're so sorry. You're not going to get to pitch today. The pitches ran long. You got to
Oh
go
my God.
home and we don't know if you'll get to come back. And I was like,
Mm.
oh, you're just devastated. Cause at that point you just want to get it out. You just sort of like
Yeah.
want to get it over with. So I went home and a few days later, the producer called and she said, there's a 50-50 chance he'll get to pitch tomorrow. Do you want to come up? And I was like, I'll be there. I was living in San Diego, just driving up to LA. I drove up. I'm sitting in the dressing room again. And this is the last day of filming for the season. So if I didn't get in
Mm.
this day, it was, done. And so at that point, I was like, you know what? I wasn't really that nervous because I was so appreciative just to have the opportunity again. I was like, this is just an amazing life experience. I'm going to go out there. I wasn't expecting a deal at all.
Mm.
I was
Mm.
like, I'm just going to do my best and that's all I can do. And, chalk this up to being a really cool life experience.
Yeah.
And so I got out there and I think that actually worked in my favor a little bit because I was calmer, I guess, from a nerve standpoint, but it's still a total blur. I was in there for over an hour. They edit it down to 12 minutes. All the sharks are firing questions at you at the same time. They try to throw you off, but I'd been practicing like crazy for that.
Wow.
And so I did really well. I held my own, especially considering I had like barely, at that point, I think I had Whole Foods had given me like a tentative PO, a LOI. But I really didn't have much traction and I had a really bad story about losing a bunch of money in inventory.
Yeah.
So surprisingly though, my pitch was compelling. The product, was compelling and Mark Cuban made me an offer, exactly what I asked, which was very reasonable because I had really no defensible, valuation at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was shocked. And then it was so funny, they say you get the deal and they're like, okay, thanks. And you walk out the back into the alley of the studio space.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, did that just really happen? I have no idea. So get in my car, drive home. And then, like for a couple days, I'm like, I don't know. That was so crazy. Did that just happen? So then I finally get a call from Mark's, his head of ops, and she's like, hey, congrats. And then they start the due diligence process. And that was probably like 30 days or so. They just
Mm-hmm.
have to make sure everything you said was legit. And then you actually sign the paperwork and do the deal. And he was amazing to work with, like, can't say enough good things. He's in it for the right reasons. He really helps entrepreneurs. They
Mm.
offer so many resources besides the money. It was 100% worth, the deal that we did. But it came with a whole nother set of challenges. So, yeah, but it was a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And thanks for sharing that. I was like, um, Just one more question on that, and then we'll move on. Um, Once you have this deal in place and everything is signed off and everything, do you feel some kind of pressure? I mean, you do naturally feel some kind of pressure whenever you raise money, anyways, from the VC side. But how was your experience in that regards?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt another level of pressure with Mark Cuban, because you don't wanna let someone like Mark Cuban down, right? That's,
Yeah.
like, such a cool investor to get, and I believe that he is, he's a hard worker, right? So you don't want to ever be perceived as not working hard enough or trying hard enough. So it put me in this situation where I was willing to just like kill myself to try to make this company work and grow because
Mm,
I was so thankful to have him involved and to have him believe in me and my company. And you don't want to let him down. So it's good and bad, like, it's fun pressure because it's exciting, but then you realize, after a while, it was like, "Wow, I have been killing myself for this company, and is this really what I want, and is this healthy?" Like, yeah, I think people are built differently too. I think Mark Cuban is I don't know, like, people are built differently where some people can sustain sleeping 4 hours a night forever and they're okay. I don't think I'm built that way, I realized, it
mm,
started to catch up with me. I had high blood pressure. It just wasn't, it wasn't fun anymore, put it that way, after a while. But not his
mm,
fault. I put that on pressure. I didn't feel like he wasn't directly putting that pressure on us. I definitely was just putting that pressure on myself. But yeah, it's
mm,
a great question. It definitely factors into things for sure.
mm. Cool, cool. Well, thanks for sharing that, Tara. I really appreciate it. So let's go back to your current company then. How many team members do you have right now? And like, um, was like, could you share a little bit more about like how many numbers of customers you have? How big is the company? Things like that, just to give an idea.
Yeah, so we're about 3 million revenue, so it's small this year.
Mm-hmm,
I've got 5 full-time people, employees, and
mm-hmm,
then, yeah, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe like 15 contractors, 20 contractors.
yeah.
And yeah, it's good. We're really profitable. It's taken a little bit to smooth out all the operations.
Mm-hmm,
We have 34, I think it is, clients, owners that we manage for, and
mm-hmm,
then we own a few properties ourselves. And yeah, I think that's it. So we grow, like, we only take on new clients in the slow season.
mm-hmm.
Again, the goal isn't just to grow for the sake of growing, so I'm very strategic and very selective with the properties and with the owners. I can tell now after a conversation with an owner if it's someone I wanna work with or not, because it's really a long-term partnership.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a one-time service thing. So, and a lot of these assets, some of the owners are strictly investors, but for some of them, there's emotional attachment. So you get to know people pretty well, and so I'm very selective with who we work with.
Definitely, definitely. That's really good. Like, you have your in-house team and then you have things in control now at this stage, which inspires a lot of people that, it's not all bad.
Mhm.
There are some things which you feel good about once you're in the race. So let's talk a little bit about what strategies you guys are using right now to acquire customers. I mean, I know that you're your first customer, right? Because you own properties, you started, looking after them. But one of the biggest challenges uh, founders have nowadays is getting traction to their business, getting more customers, right? So I wouldn't go that early to ask you like what how did you got your first customer, but I would definitely ask you like how did you got your first 10 customers, for example, let's say, for the sake of this hypothetical question. And then what are the strategies you're using right now to acquire them?
Yeah, so to get the first 10 customers, I really looked at what is the competition offering, and I had to provide an offering that was just a no-brainer. Like, even
Mm,
though I'm new to this and our competition's been doing this for 30 years, I had to look at what are the reasons that having a fresh perspective on this industry is a benefit to the owners for
Mm,
the first kind of half of it. And then the second half is basically just offering like we don't charge this upfront, this upfront, this upfront, this upfront. So basically I was making an initial investment that my competitors weren't upfront. And a lot of owners are looking at just the hard costs and they're like, well, yeah, I'm not going to spend, a few $1,000s up front with this company. So let's
mm,
give them a shot. Um, I also don't do any long-term contracts. I was like, if we're doing a great job, I believe you'll want to stay with us. So nobody's locked in for a year. We ask like, you know, ideally a year because we do put in an upfront investment, but it's technically only a 90-day notice to get out of our contract.
mm,
So really just studied what the competition offering is and I knew we weren't going to be able to offer that long term. Like we no longer do that. Now that we have a good reputation, now we do charge for those things up front, but in the beginning, we made it a really easy decision. So mostly how we've been acquiring customers since then is honestly word of mouth.
mhm,
I do some referral fees. And then we did just start using a direct mail service in the Santa Barbara area because we do want to grow it a bit more here. And it's basically they target, geo target second homeowners and they just do a whole campaign to them. So we just started doing that. It'll take, 6 to 12 months to probably really see any results.
mhm.
But everything's mostly been word of mouth. So again, I just kind of believe if we do a really, really great job and try to do the right thing, that kind of word of mouth ends up spreading.
Mm,
In a smaller local business like this, it can work.
mm, mm. Definitely, definitely. Uh, this is interesting because you're trying to get into a very old fashioned and for some people boring business and trying to like get into the competitive space where there might be companies which are like 30, 50 years old, I'm guessing. And then still you're doing so good. There has to be something different. And you have mentioned that you have made sure that the offerings you're making to your customers are much better than your competitor. No upfront costs or no upfront fees, sorry, and no long-term contracts. There has to be something else. I mean, how are you how are you maintaining the relationship? Because that's one of the key part in this kind of business, isn't it? Relationship is something which you can't actually um sort of like not give that much effort. You have to be on top of it all the time, I'm guessing, in this kind of business, right?
In this kind of business, what I've found is there's a lot of upfront hand holding. There's a building trust period that I
Mm,
find is actually like 3 to 6 months. And it ends up hitting a few snags and working through those together for the client to trust you, you know what I mean?
mm,
And then after that, so I make myself pretty available in that first 3 to 6 months. I'm very involved and hands-on. But after that, our owners, they don't text me, they don't call me. They're, trained to basically we have a 24-hour number. They get a response right away. If I'm not available, somebody will get back to them and escalate it to me if needed or
mm,
when needed. So I think the key is having that like hands-on component when it's needed up front, but then building trust so that when you do hand them off to the team, they still feel comfortable and they feel like they're being taken care of to some degree. And ultimately, they can still get a hold of me, but I probably only talk to the owners. I mean, maybe once every couple, 3, 4 months,
mm,
because I think they're getting such quick responses from our team that they don't feel the need to reach out to me. Every once in a while, yeah, something goes wrong, or and I'm happy to jump in, but it's pretty far and few between. So I would say, yeah, that relationship building piece is huge, and it's having them build a relationship with the whole team versus just me and everything going through just me. And I think that's actually helped. Now that I'm like saying that out loud, I think that's one of the things is that I've given the opportunity for them to build relationships with the whole team versus it being all on me.
Mm, mm. Interesting. um, I think this is something which we all should learn from, because you see, when you sign up with a customer, especially a B2B customer, they expect quite a lot of value upfront in terms of not just the product or service, but also individual connection from the company. So that's, I think, a right thing to do. You you also run a podcast, right? Is
Mhm.
the Seed Money podcast, right? um I was thinking to ask you about a little bit from that experience. You talk to startups about founders all the time. What's a recurring sort of like a theme you see among these who succeeded versus those who struggle to raise seed money?
I would say the biggest thing, um, because I've mentored, so even since before doing the podcast, I worked with some accelerator programs, incubators, and mentored on the side. Being coachable. I think the founders I see that just feel like they know everything and that investors should just get it,
Mm,
and that and they're not open to being coachable and to really truly being open to feedback are the ones that inevitably end up struggling to get funding, because investors want to see you're coachable. They want to know, like, especially at the seed money stage, it's such an emotional investment. The risk is, it's a very high risk investment, like the reality
yeah,
of it, right? So
yeah.
they want to know they can help. And if the entrepreneur doesn't seem even remotely coachable, that investor isn't going to feel like they can add any value or share their wisdom, and it's going to be received. So I'd say that's the number one thing. Like, if you're not coachable and not open to really truly listening to and it doesn't mean you have to take what they say and do it, but listening and really, getting advice from multiple people and then combining that with your own intuition and your own vision, and, you know, making decisions that way, is much better off than the entrepreneurs who are just like, no, I know what I'm doing. I don't need their input.
Mm,
I don't know. I've seen a lot of people not raise money because of that, or even their pitch decks. Like, I've seen entrepreneurs who just are like not open to changing their pitch decks. And it's like, this is
mm.
confusing. It's not making sense. And you got to have it make sense. You only get so much time from an investor. It's got to be clear. It's got to be compelling. And it's got to be digestible in 2 minutes or less.
Mm. Indeed. That's very interesting to know, because this is something not everybody experience, because you see both side of the spectrum, right? That's why you're aware of it. That's why it's quite interesting. uh, what uh, what what's an investment or business decision you have deeply regretted, in terms of and then what did you learn from it?
Hmm. An investment or business decision. Well, I would say, in my first company, the decision to grow at the pace we were going to try to grow, like, we were trying to go too far, too fast. And
Mm,
I try not to really have any regrets because it all landed me where I am today. And I'm very
yeah.
happy to be where I am. But ultimately, that was something I would have done differently. And so once Shark Tank aired, you're so used to begging these distributors to take your product and retailers, and you're just like begging everyone to take your product for the most part, right? And this was before the light alcohol. Now it's like an $11 billion category. There was no category for this. So it was carving out a new space, which is very hard to do and expensive.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to go into grocery stores and restaurants and spas and nightclubs and resorts in Vegas and direct online. And we were going across the country. And then we were trying to do a poolside container. And that was just a bad idea. We didn't have the resources to do that. And we really should have stayed a lot more focused.
Mm.
Um, I think it would have played out a lot differently. I would have become probably less burnt out. I think we would have been at least a little bit closer to being profitable. It's tough in alcohol to be profitable anyway,
Mm.
especially carving out a new category. But I do regret that. Going too far, too fast, not staying focused is a really dangerous game. And I started to see myself do that in this business. It was like, oh, let's just grow, grow, grow. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm doing it again. What am I doing? gotta learn the lesson I learned. And so I pumped the brakes, realized I was doing that again because it's fun. I think all of us entrepreneurs, it's like, it's fun to grow. It's exciting. And
Definitely.
society puts this thing on us that like you're only successful if you're growing and you're trying to be a unicorn and you're like going for this. And it's like, that's so ridiculous if you think about it. Like that's
Mm.
some people do get into entrepreneurship for that, but there's a million other reasons to be an entrepreneur. And your success should not be defined by how fast you grow or how many millions you make. You know what I mean? It's just, unfortunately, I think that's been the vibe in the entrepreneurship world. I do think it's shifting quite a bit, but yeah, it's hard not to get caught up in that.
No, definitely. I couldn't agree more with you on this one because the definition of success is different for everyone.
Mhm.
Some people are happy because they work 9 to 5, they have a good job, they have family, 2 kids, and they're happy with it. Some people are not happy when they are the president of the world.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Great. So I have this segment on my show where I share my notes with my guest. So that excuse me. So let me get that up if I can. Um, in the in the beginning, when you started your journey, were there any influences from your childhood, like either your family members or the concept of rich dad poor dad, something like that, who inspired you to become an entrepreneur? Is there anyone in your life you had who played a pivotal role?
Yeah, my dad had his own business. It was a local business, small business, a land surveying. Um, and I grew up, my parents were always around. His office was at home. He had employees and, it was growing and highs and lows, but he always had flexibility and he loved what he did. I can honestly say he is still to this day retired and does projects here and there because he just
Mm.
loves doing it. So I saw this like role model of someone who had flexibility and time, didn't have a boss, and loved what he did. And that's pretty amazing,
Mm.
actually, right? On the flip side of that, and it took me years to understand this part of it, um, there were also kind of limiting, beliefs, I think, there that were passed on to me of you got to do everything yourself. You got to, um, even little things, like, I remember my dad always, my mom would do his bookkeeping and stuff, and the people would always owe him money. He was really bad about collecting,
Mm.
money from clients. And it was so funny because I realized years later that I was kinda doing the same thing, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is not normal." This was planted in my head as a kid that it's like, you shouldn't really ask your customers for money. It was like
Mm.
ridiculous. So now I'm really on top of that and I learned that lesson. So it's interesting how there's like positives and, there's good things that can inspire you. And then there's also these like kind of limiting things that are, planted in your head as a kid. But overall, I think overall it was definitely a really positive inspiration coming from him. And it was at the end of around that 10 years of the wine company that I realized, I was like, here I am growing this company, but this isn't like what I want. I'm not passionate about it. I don't have any time flexibility. Like the reasons I wanted to work for myself and not be in the corporate world were like what my dad had growing up. He had
Mm,
this flexibility. He did well financially. Wasn't like crazy, we were like middle class, but upper side of it, did well. And I was like, that was great. What's wrong with that? I don't have to try to like grow this huge company. And not that there's anything wrong with it, but I think, so now I really do focus on only doing things that make me happy, trying to get
mhm,
closer and closer to that. And that's what seed money is. I love doing that. Like I love talking about this stuff. I love doing the podcast. So I want to make sure I'm spending my time doing things I love and
mhm.
also having the flexibility to spend time with my family. So that's kind of how I measure. And I like making money too. So
Yeah, yeah.
of course that's a piece of it, but that's how I've now defined success for myself. And I think that inspiration came from him. So
Definitely, definitely. I mean, y- I have had so many lucky moments on this show where I had this opportunity to speak with my host, where they share the story and the people they've been influenced by. It's great. So let's go quickly through your journey and what you have shared with our listeners. So you started with your journey with a consumer product. I think you got amazing success with that, but also a life's lesson you have learned with it. That gave you this idea about like you went too far too fast on that one. And one of the things you mentioned about the poolside containers, which you didn't thought that it went well, but that all encourage you to get into the service based business which you're working right now at the moment. And that triggers you guys moving to Santa Barbara, where you got into short term rentals. And then one of the early learnings you had was hiring a wrong management company, which kind of triggered the whole idea behind your business right now. And then one of the pivotal moment in your life was around getting into Shark Tank, getting this deal with Mark, having this whole experience of learning from him. And then I think personally that could might have added quite a lot of personality how you currently managing your business, right? Because that gives you this idea, isn't it? You mentioned that in order to operate your business, you make sure that you offer more than what your competitors do. You don't charge any upfront fee or any no long term contracts at the moment, which is good because the customer knows now this is straight away a value for them when they get into contract with you guys. And then most of your customers come from word of mouth, and you opted for a recent direct mail services which you looking forward to work yeah, soon in the near future. Uh, One thing also you mentioned about the seed money podcast you run, that the primary difference you have seen between successful and not that successful founders in terms of raising seed money is coachability, taking feedback, and open to the change. And that these are the three main pillars of getting into founder space and raise money at early stage. Um, is this you think a pretty good summary of what we discussed? Anything we missed? You think needed to be added here?
no, I love it. This is so fun. I would say the only thing, because it's such an important part of my life now, is my family. My son, I have an 8-year-old, and my
Hmm.
husband, and I just like cherish the fact that I have my family and they're, such an important part of my life now,
There
to
you
in
go.
terms of making it fulfilling. Yep. There you
There you
go.
go. Your husband and then you have a kid also. So we
Yep.
have it now. Perfect.
There you go.
Perfect family. Great stuff. Cool. So let's go back to our other segment on our show, which is a quick fire lightning show. Sorry, lightning round. We have got 6 questions, and you can answer them as quickly as you can. You ready?
Yep. Sounds good.
Great. Let's do it. Number one, what are the top 3 strategies to generate seed money in 2025?
get all your ducks in a row, know your numbers, have a good pitch deck. The next one is be willing to talk to anybody. You got to
Mm-hmm.
put it in front of everyone you talk to, and even just say, do you know any investors? You got to network with everybody. And the third one I would say is have that vision that you are going to get the funding and focus on that every single day, and
Mm.
just don't look down and stay focused on that vision of closing that round until you get it, and be determined to get it.
Yeah, yeah. This is something which my mom used to tell me all the time. Like, if you manifest something every day, it's getting closer to you. So yeah, that
Love
that
that.
that works. What book would you recommend to our audience, and why?
Probably one of my favorite books in the last couple of years is Buy Back Your Time with Dan Martell. And that book really truly has gotten my lifestyle to where I am right now, because it's almost like that Rich Dad Poor Dad like mental shift, where I didn't get how to free up time, how to actually do more in less time. I couldn't get there. And that book helped me get there. And now I have somebody manage my email, manage my calendar, basically anything I don't like doing and anything I'm not good at. I outsource now, but like previously with my dad doing everything himself kind of thing, I made a huge shift, and that book helped me get there to actually get my time back, and it's incredibly liberating. It makes life a
I,
lot more fun.
I need to add that into my reading list. I'm
It's great.
currently going through Psychology of Money.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's a
hopefully,
good
yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah. So hopefully after that, I'll put this one next.
Yep.
Oh, I also have to get through the Titans. My partner already has given me a gift. She keeps giving me books. I don't like to read them, but now I have to do
The
it.
Titans? I haven't read that one.
Yeah, I think
Check
the
that out.
Titans of work or something. I'll send you the
Oh,
details later.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
basically a curation of stories of small startups.
Oh, that's cool.
It's quite, the summary looks quite interesting, but I'm just waiting for this one to finish and then I'll jump on that. So yeah, I'll share it with you later. What's one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
It's so funny because there's like two things that come to mind that are polar opposite. I think successful founders are confident. You have to have that confidence. But equally, another thing is really knowing your numbers is so important. It's such a basic thing, but it's so easy to kind of like forget sometimes, or brush over, or make assumptions. And really understanding your financial path, and knowing your numbers is super important. I think
Yeah, yeah.
define
I
your
see a lot of founders while they're pitching, they mess up with their numbers and they try to get back. But once you mess up, then you lose the confidence from the
yeah.
investor side. That's the important bit. So yeah, yeah, that's a good one. What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
My favorite habit? Well, I could speak currently. I have I have deleted, my social media, apps off my phone.
Wow.
So I only go on my desktop if I have to do something for work. So I have really made a strong effort. I think it's with everything going on. Oh, sorry. My camera just shut off. 1 second.
No problem.
Quickly and all of that. It's just, I don't know. I think there's always distractions. And if you notice you're being distracted by something, eliminating that. And there's good distractions and there's bad distractions. And it's hard sometimes to recognize what those are. So for me right now, I've deleted them and I feel a lot better. I kind of just did it as a test for a week and I was like, wow, that's like really freeing. And it's funny, I have an 8-year-old son who I'm constantly trying to limit his time on screens and YouTube. And I'm like, I need to do the same thing for myself. I need to like, not be on a screen all the time. So that's kind of my favorite habit. And I do feel more focused when I'm not just kind of tied to my phone. And when I sit down to work, I do my work, and it's hard though. I think we all it's a challenge for everybody, but that's kind of my favorite one right now.
Now that's very admirable, because I think you're doing it because you want to make sure that you become a example, so that that little one also can follow that up. So that's really
Mhm.
cool. What's a new or a crazy business idea you would love to pursue if you had time?
Oh, wow, interesting. Well, I could say, like, I don't know if it's that new or crazy, but one of the things I have in the plans are, well, actually, okay. So, yeah, I mean, really, what I would love to do at some point, my husband and I have been talking about this, is like have some sort of like cool setup in Italy
Hmm.
and spend a lot of time there. I'm eligible for an Italian passport. And I think, of course, a lot of Americans dream of doing that, right? But so it's not that crazy. It's nothing that new, but we love Italy. We spent 3 weeks there this past summer. And that's something like down the road we would love to do some sort of like boutique hotel or agroturismo type thing, or I don't know,
Hmm.
something over there in Italy would be really fun. We have 18 acres in Vermont that's subdivided right now into 7 lots. Beautiful land. And we want to build on that. We might do it this year or next year, but do some sort of just really unique, cool, um, like setting. We want to build places that could resale. So we don't want to do like tree houses, but
Hmm.
we want to do something unique and, really make it a draw. We've talked about having a private, ski hill because there's a hill there, or something that would be a really great draw for guests,
Hmm.
and unique for the area. So anyway, those are just kind of little things we've been, throwing around as doing, but I don't really have anything too crazy outside of that. But yeah, you
Y-
never
y-
know. I don't know. You
Yeah.
never know too. Who knows what I'll be doing in 10 years? I love that part of life. Maybe I'll have some crazy idea that I'll go for between now and then.
Perfect. Perfect. And last but not least, what's an interesting or a fun fact about you that most people don't know?
Oh my goodness. Well, I am a sucker for tropical water.
Hmm.
And I guess I say that we're getting ready to go to Belize in 10 days, and I am just so looking forward to it. Like, I could move to a Caribbean island and live there on the beach and be so happy for the rest of my life. So I just love tropical water, and I am just so excited to go to Belize in 10 days. And so yeah, I guess that's something, little fun fact, especially growing up in New Hampshire. I don't know if that's why. I love the warm weather, but man, I am at my happiest place when I am floating in an ocean that is like 80 degrees.
Perfect. That's perfect temperature. Yeah. Great stuff. Jala, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story, unpacking last years of building different businesses and some of the ups and downs along the way. If people want to check out or get in touch with you, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great way. Jayla Siciliano or seedmoneypodcast.com. You can email me from there. Happy to review people's pitch decks for free, and just happy to help in any way I can.
Perfect. Jala, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing through your start podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
Thank you for having me. This was fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Founders Podcast. I hope you found our conversation with Jella insightful and inspiring. Give it a try. Search on LinkedIn, Jella, and then maybe connect with her. Send all of your pitches. Get her opinion on that. I'm sure she will. She'll be happy to help you out. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to her podcast and stay updated on future interviews with proven founders and industry experts. Stay inspired, stay motivated, and keep building.